Hello lovely people and welcome back to this week's new video. I spent like so long trying to find a good place to film because I'm not in my home, I'm at my boyfriend's place. I also took so long getting ready that now it's getting cloudy and dark, with it now being like daylight savings. It gets dark really soon and it's really sad. And I don't have any of my equipment with me, but hi, I'm Noah. I'm a bookish and lifestyle content creator, born and raised and still based in New York, and if that sounds like of any interest to you, I hope that you subscribe at the end if you so please. I am coming to you today with my November wrap up with my still wet, messy ass hair. There's still like a day or two left in November and I'm in between books right now, so it felt kind of right because I think I can only fit one more book into the month. So we're just gonna wrap up everything that I read so far. I believe last I counted it's 17, but because I'm at my boyfriend's place, I read like 3 picture books, so I think it's like roughly around 20 books. Editing me will help me out here. We're gonna go through them by rating. No rating all the way up to 5-star reads, of which I have 3 spoiler. So let's just get into it. I have my notes. Let's begin. Starting off with the books of which that I have no rating for is A Textbook Case by Jeffrey Deaver, which is book 9.5, so it's like a novella in the Lincoln Rhyme series, which I'm still making my way through. It's quite long. I think I'm almost there though, because I think there's only like 12 books in the series if I'm correct. I'm not really sure. So like I said, this is a novella. I read it by ebook. It's sort of made for people who have not read the Lincoln Rhyme series before, so I didn't really know how to rate it, especially with it being so short. Lincoln Rhyme is a top criminologist in his field. He used to be on the police force but no longer is due to an injury on the job. His mind still works, he's still a very brilliant man, and so he is working with them on this case, a very short case of a woman who was brutally murdered in a garage. He has a team of people that help him, obviously, that work with him to figure out who the perpetrator is. It was geared towards people who haven't really read the series before, so it was a little bit more info dumpy in terms of trying to introduce all of these characters that normally would happen in a longer 300 plus page book. I felt it was a little off-putting, especially with it being book 9.5. I feel like it could have been book 0 or something like that. Didn't really know what to think of it. The next book was a YA graphic memoir, In Limbo by Deb JJ Lee. Like I said, this is a graphic memoir of Korean American Deb and her coming of age. She always knows that she's different, especially in this white community, of being surrounded by a lot of white people and not really fitting into that community, but also not fitting in to Korea also, which I have definitely felt. She feels really isolated, especially because the teachers can't pronounce her Korean name, and so she ends up picking a name for herself, Deb. She doesn't really feel like safe at home. She feels isolated from the little friends that she has. It just reminded me how awful of a place like high school was to me. Not necessarily like the people, but just like the mindset that you are in as a young person coming up in the world, and how just everything feels pitted against you, and you're just all up in your head. Everything just feels so awful all the time. It's just taking a huge toll on Deb's mental health. And with it being a graphic memoir, it felt weird to rate it, which is why I give it no rating. Moving on to 1-star books, I just have one. It is the picture book that I read on my boyfriend's shelf. It's Yoko by Rosemary Wells. I remember Rosemary Wells so well. I remember this book really well, and like remembering that I really loved this author's drawings and these books. I think they are the author of Max and Ruby. Those books I really loved as well. But then I read this and just like didn't feel really good about it. There is this young cat, a Japanese kitty, whose mom packs her sushi for lunch, and she's really excited. She loves the seaweed and the rice and the love that her mom has put into her lunch, and everyone at school brings in like a fucking bland ass sandwich and hates her for bringing fish, and they're like,
ew, that's so disgusting, why would you ever eat that?
And the teacher comes up with like an international celebration day and everyone has to bring in a different dish and eat it, but the teacher like doesn't really address any of the bullying, and like none of the kids end up eating the fucking sushi anyway, and it just felt weird. I wasn't bullied for bringing in weird lunch, which was basically like rice balls and stuff like that. I was very privileged to not have experienced that, which is a really sad statement. Everyone really loved my lunch and they all wanted to trade with me, but I have had friends, many friends, who have dealt with that, and I would say in that concept it was very real, but there was only like one kid who enjoyed the sushi, and it was kind of like a last resort because that was the only food that was left at the very end and they were still hungry. So I don't feel like this book resolved anything really. She just found one new friend out of it. I just like overall didn't really sit well with me. Getting into the books that I rated 2 stars is How to Pronounce Knife, Stories by Suvankam Tamabongsa. This is the author's debut. I think it was like 4 or 5 stories. Overall, like I said, it is 2 stars, but each story was following a story of an Asian family. Themes across them were about immigration, culture, differences of values, and feeling isolated because of that. It reminded me of my childhood, this book as well, because my parents were not confident in being able to give us like the correct pronunciations of words, had us listen to audiobooks when we were kids and go to like read aloud times at the libraries. In that way, my sister and I both fell in love with reading, which was really great, obviously. I just felt like each story was really short and I was unable to grasp what I really would have liked to, and I feel like some of them could have been like a full-fledged novel to really connect with the characters and the concept of it. All right, 3 stars. I've got a few, starting with a graphic novel comic called Woman World by Aminder Dhaliwal. If you want something like darker and more sciencey, it would be Y the Last Man, which I still would like to watch the show. Anyone who's watched it on Hulu, let me know how you liked it. It is about a world where men cease to exist. The women who end up giving birth, those children come out as females, or as they get older end up identifying as women. And it was just this really cute story of how like well the world functions, how much more peaceful and how much kinder everybody is to each other. They all have like these little towns and communities and they're all just really nice to each other. They all love Beyonce and their new communities are named after her and parts of her, and it was just this cute silly little book. The next one is another one of the picture books that I picked up at Koda's library, is In the Night Kitchen by Mari Sendak. I loved Mari Sendak growing up, and I love that the Brooklyn Public Library did like a little collaboration, and my library card is like a little one of Where the Wild Things Are. This is about young Mickey who falls through the dark into the night kitchen where these 3 fat bakers are baking in the night for the morning so that they can all enjoy cake. It's just this silly little book. I remember reading this as a kid and thinking it's so weird, but it's so like nice to see Mari Sendak's unique art style that I really enjoyed. It still held up. I've got Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. This one was interesting too because my mom read this as when she was younger. She didn't really remember anything about it, but then I also had another friend who possibly read it but definitely has read other things by Banana Yoshimoto. Apparently she was like a huge thing in the 80s in Japan, and I remember this being really popular, I feel like, on BookTube a few years ago, which is why it was like at the back of my mind. I originally had picked this up to do a video concept of reading short books and novellas to catch up on my Goodreads goal, and I nixed that idea. But anyway, this book also had 2 different parts, and I ended up preferring Kitchen over the second chapter, Moonlight Shadow, because they were really separate stories. They both were about grief, I realized. So the first part of or chapter 1, I guess, Kitchen, is the longer portion of it, and it's about Mikage, who is an orphan, and she gets taken in by this mother and son. They have like this weird dynamic of like being this family that no one seems to understand. She's very drawn to people's kitchens and wanting to cook there and creating food. And then the second part, Moonlight Shadow, it was also about grief. It was about this young girl whose boyfriend died and her friendship that she bonds over with the boyfriend's brother about that loss. It's a very Japanese book to me. It's weird, and it might be in the translation, which I'm sure the translator did it to the best of their ability, but I just don't feel like translated books can really capture the full beauty of the language that's originally written in. But it also is kind of melancholic. I feel like a lot of Japanese books are quite melancholic in tone. I don't find that it's really for me, but I did want to try it out. Moving on into books that were 3.5 stars is another graphic novel, Donuts and Doom by Balaz Lorenzi. This is about a teenage witch who's trying to pass her test to get a new license of being able to actually perform magic. She runs a little shop of creating little potions to help people, but she can't yet perform spells. She creates this sort of friendship with this person who works at a donut shop, and she has like the worst luck, this human girl, after that, and she's out trying to help her, and they form this really cute friendship of like trying to be yourself and coming out of your shell. And hello, of like overcoming your fears. What is it called? Her familiar, the witch's familiar, is a snake, and I really hated that because I do not like snakes. She's crying. I don't know if you can hear that. I just really started craving donuts. Deja boo, come here. I quite enjoyed the art style of this one, and I really liked the friendship that they created, because you never would have thought, because they were just so angry at each other at the beginning. But it was really nice because they were both able to help each other in the end, and it was really nice. The other one, hi, the other 3.5 star book, this is Nana. I didn't introduce her. She is such a good girl. The other 3.5 star book is the one that I actually just finished, if I can reach out and grab it. Is called The Removed by Brandon Hobson. Thank you. I have lip gloss on, so please be careful. I'm gonna just put this down so I can hold her. I don't know if this was a good idea, but she's so cute. This book is following the Ichota family. It's also rooted in Cherokee folklore. The author, Brandon Hobson, is a member of the Cherokee Nation, and they are all grieving 15 years later after the violent death of the brother, Ray, who died at the hands of the police in a police shooting. We're following each family member, so there's the mother and the father, the sister Sonia, and the youngest brother, Edgar. And then there's this little foster kid named Wyatt who comes into their life, into the parents' lives, Maria and Ernest. The family is like, at least the parents are starting to heal, and they're seeing parts of Ray in Wyatt, and they're just finding so much more joy in their lives. They've been dealing with a lot with the youngest brother, Edgar. Dealing with drug abuse. The older sister Sonia lives nearby, but she's also having trouble like connecting with the youngest brother. The father, Ernest, is dealing with Alzheimer's as well. Presence of Wyatt there is like really helping, and so they're all dealing with different things, and they want to come together for this Cherokee national holiday, which also happens to coincide with the anniversary of Ray's death. This book is also just really about grief, and it took me a while to like notice, to see where the book was going. What does that sound? Between each like chapters, which are in POVs of each character, there is some Cherokee folklore. Apparently these are some stories that you can tell your children, and I at first didn't really understand what the point of those were until I started to see how those folklores were tied into what the family was dealing with and what they were going through. I really started to come around to Sonia. I thought she was so sus in the beginning because she's this older woman that's kind of carelessly dating a lot of younger men, and it seemed like she was putting herself in a lot of bad situations. It felt really unsafe to me until I realized what she was doing, which is like doesn't really make up for her putting herself in dangerous situations, but it felt like it was something that she needed to do. And I think that for the parents, I think their oldest or their middle child being taken away, he was such a joy in their life. He breathed a lot of energy into this family, and suddenly he's gone. Everything kind of fell flat and it wasn't there anymore, and Wyatt helped breathe back that light into their life, especially for the father, Ernest. His Alzheimer's started to really clear up. He started to remember a lot of things, and he just felt like Ray was back there with him, which was so heartwarming, and he's like my favorite character in this book. I just felt like there was such a disconnect between the beginning and the ending of when I started to like it, which is why it's sort of in the middle rating wise. Moving on to 3.75 stars was No Filter and Other Lies by Crystal Maldonado. I just really love Crystal Maldonado. It all started with Fat Chance Charlie Vega. This one is following Max. Or it's following Kat, and she's living this quiet life in her little town. She loves photography and she wants her Instagram to reflect that. It's not really blowing up in the way that her other friends do. Instead, she creates this persona called Max Monroe to sort of spice up her drab life and show that she's like cool and she's this influencer. But she instead uses the photos that she takes of her coworker, who is very against social media and never wants any of her photos to be uploaded. So she's like totally catfishing, impersonating somebody, which is really awful. But then she meets this other girl, this other influencer who really connects with her, and they really start to develop a connection. But this poor girl, Elena, thinks that Max is a real person. It gets really complicated for Kat to try to juggle that because she starts to want to meet. And I thought that it had a lot of important messages about social media and how dangerous it can be, but also how social media and the likes that you get on there is not everything. You do not need to obsess and like kill yourself over these silly little reviews of what people think of you online. You don't need other people's validations and stuff like that. I really had trouble with the whole catfishing thing. It just felt a little bit too messy to me, which is why I got bumped down to 3.75 when I didn't think that there was going to be a whole confrontation between her and her coworker. I was like really upset because I feel like that was such an important thing to talk about, and for not Max Cat to understand why that was wrong. I did get that resolve. I just felt really icky about it. Moving into 4 Starbucks. First one I have on here is the last picture book that I ended up picking up, which is Madeline by Ludwig Bemelmans. I remember reading Madeline and all of the different books that this author has put out within this world and just really liking it. And I didn't realize just how simplistic the art was. I never noticed that, but I really loved the stories. This one is just about her and how her appendix bursts and they all go visit her and they're all envious of her scar. But I didn't also realize just how rhymey it was. And it was just really a cute, sweet little time. I feel like there was a show and I maybe watched it, but I might just be making things up. Next one was Stars in Your Eyes by Kacen Callender. Kacen Callender's YA book, Felix Ever After, was one of my favorite books a few years ago. 5 stars all around. And this, I think, is Kacen Callender's first ever adult book. They've released other YA novels, but also middle grade novels. It was a male-male romance. It is a fake dating trope between these 2 actors in Hollywood who are working together on a movie. One is like a golden boy, up and coming golden retriever type, and his name is Maddie, and the other is the bad boy, washed up child star who is an addict. Nobody really wants to work with him anymore. He like doesn't know if he wants to do acting anymore, and his name is Logan. Logan has trash talked Maddie prior to doing the movie together, and so the producers and the director want them to create good publicity for the movie, and they create a whole fake dating scheme so that it could drive up excitement for this new movie that they're going to be putting out. And of course that turns into a more complicated situation of whether they like each other, not whether that's right for each other, because they're such different people. They're also both very damaged in their own way. Maddie has only like pretty recently come out as gay and has a lot of issues with being like out and proud specifically. Logan, on the other hand, with his drug and alcohol abuse, but also verbal abuse of his father, being in the industry for so long, has dealt with a lot of trauma. They're like working through a lot of things together. I think that reading about a fake Hollywood was really weird and it felt really corny at times, but overall I did really enjoy reading about Maddie and Logan and how they both really needed to heal in order to be together, and that maybe being in this fake relationship, although it seemed so ridiculous in the beginning, just was something that they actually needed in real life. The next one is of course another graphic novel. I think this is also YA, and it is The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag. This is about 15-year-old Morgan, and she wants to escape the tiny little island that she lives on. She is also keeping the secret of being gay. She doesn't really know how to tell her friends. She doesn't feel like her friends would understand, and they all kind of seem to be hanging out without her. The magical aspect of this is that one day she's saved from drowning by this mysterious girl named Kelty. Kelty has her own secrets. She is a Selkie. The 2 develop a relationship that they have to keep secret. I thought that the teen relationships were really real, of like, are they still gonna want to be my friend if I do this, if this happens, and this and this, and it was kind of like this heartwarming story, this ending that I really liked. Moving on is a comic more like. I think I'm in Friend Love With You by Yumi Sakugawa. Really quick, short, easy read. It's sort of exploring like, oh wait, I'm in love with you, but in a friend way, of just like coming to realize that you love your friend a lot, and I thought it was really cute and funny. It's going through the reasons of why they think that they're in love with this person, but not in any sort of sexual weird way. It's like all totally platonic. I loved the drawings by this author. It was just a really sweet time, and it reminded me why like I love my friends. Next book is book number 9 in the Lincoln Rhyme series, The Burning Wire by Jeffrey Deaver. I never really know what to say about these because these are all within a series. I just really love seeing how crimes are solved. This one sort of ties into one of the past books within in the Lincoln Rhyme series because they're following like two different perps. One is a perp who got away, but then they're also fighting like a new crime, and it's getting so dark, so I need to hurry up. Ringshot by P. Clark was one of the other books that I was going to read for reading short stories and novellas to catch up on my Goodreads goal, and I totally think that this is something that should be developed into a movie. Someone wrote that they think that Jordan Peele should write it. I'm jumping on that train. I fully agree. It's a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of magical realism fantasy. In America, this is in 1915. The Birth of a Nation, this awful racist movie comes out, and like the white community like loves it. It's openly about like the KKK, how they're so great and all that sort of bullshit. In this world, KKKs are humans, but there are Ku Kluxes who are the demons in which the humans can become demon monsters. It follows this little band of resistance fighters. There's 3 of them. They hunt down these Ku Kluxes to save their community, to fight back against the oppression. And this is all taking place in like the 1920s, which I thought was really cool. And it was just really terrifying also, because you could see how the Ku Kluxes evolve into these demons. They're like sort of like these dog-like aggressive creatures. With the re-release of The Birth of the Nation and the hatred that is still there and the racism that they're fighting against, the evolvement of these demons is getting faster. I thought it was like a really scary, cool concept. Last one for this 4-star books is The Fall of Whit Rivera by Crystal Maldonado. It is so fucking dark. This is like the perfect fall vibes book. Crystal Maldonado in her author's note wrote that the only things that she had in mind when writing this book was fall. I think like pumpkin spice latte type of fall and love. Whitney loves all things fall, and her school has this thing called Fall Fest that she absolutely loves. It's how her grandparents met. So Fall Fest is like the vibe for her, and she really wants to get on the committee to plan the new Fall Fest, create it into all its glory that she believes it to be. I really should have started filming earlier because now I hate this lighting too, but hi, now you can actually see me. But on the committee is also going to be her like Nemesis Z, who did her dirty in middle school, but then she starts to develop feelings for him as they start to work closely together. This book is covering heavier topics as well, like PCOS, which the author is drawing from her own experiences, chronic illness, sexuality, fat phobia, as Crystal Maldonado's books usually do. Zay really reminded me of Jackson from Sex Education, or at least that's how I was envisioning him, and that made it like a really fun time also. Like I said, I just love Crystal Maldonado, and honestly, she can do no wrong. And finally, we're on the last category of 5-star books. First one, of course, is a graphic novel. It is a YA graphic novel called The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich by Deya Muniz. I did not expect to love this book so much. I found it to be so heartwarming. Lady Camembert wants to live life on her own terms, and in her world, that does not include marriage to a man, and her father really understands that, but she is the only child. Father passes away. There is no way for her to claim his titles and his money without being married to a man or being a man. And so she creates a new identity as a man, and she moves away to Kingdom of Fromage, and there she meets the princess of all people, Princess Brie, and she just falls in love with every part of her. Being seen with Princess Brie, obviously she is a huge name. Lady Camembert is drawing a lot of attention to herself, and everyone's kind of starting to catch on that she is not who she says she is. It's about whether the two of them could be together but also keep Lady Camembert's identity a secret. It's this really adorable romantic comedy about identity, true love, and I absolutely loved that this world, everything was cheese named. So like I said, Lady Camembert, Princess Brie, Kingdom of Fromage, even the designer names, I think it was like Goo Cheese. I loved it. I totally wanted all the grilled cheese sandwiches after that. It's just overall really heartwarming. I love the art style. I think this is possibly going to be a series. Next was Murder Book, a graphic memoir of a true crime obsession by Hilary Fitzgerald Campbell. And I don't typically rate graphic memoirs, but I just felt so seen. I love true crime. There are like very few people in my life who understand that obsession. There's probably like just one person who does. It just felt really cool to look back into my life about like why this started for me and how. Just like Hilary Fitzgerald Campbell was. It just felt like someone who like finally understood me. The last book I have to say for last, which is so interesting because it's also like the first book that I read this month, and it's Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. I borrowed it from the library because I saw Riley Marie reading it and she gave it 5 stars. When I picked this book up, there's cat hair on my face, I like completely forgot what it was about. I was mistaking the plot of this book with another book that she was reading, I think, because I thought this book was about vampires, and it's not. It is like a dark sapphic romance. Rosemary meets Ash at the farmer's market one day, and she is like practically the perfect woman. She's so pretty and she is so cool. She creates these delicious cupcakes. She's so drawn to her that she ends up going back to the farmer's market every weekend just to see this lady and eat her delicious cupcakes. And they create a friendship which turns into this relationship. Rosemary is like so infatuated with Ash, becomes like this obsession that completely takes over her. And that's all I'm gonna say. It was so interesting because the whole time thought it was about vampires until the end, and I was like, oh my god, no, this isn't vampires. I was expecting some blood-sucking, some Bella and Edward vibes, and it wasn't there. But it was still like dark and just so mind-blowing that by the end I was like, I have to give this 5 stars. That's all I'm gonna say. I hope you enjoyed it if you read it. Please let me know what books that you read this month, how many that you have enjoyed. I'm honestly surprised that out of the 20 books that I've read this month, I have 3 5-star reads. This year I've had a lot of lower rated books, so I'm a little bit afraid to see what my not my Spotify Wrapped, which just came out today, my Goodreads wrap up is going to look like. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.